Welcome to Propaganda Loves You, the show that asks and answers the question, if the Europeans are opening up investigations because of the release of the Epstein Files, why is the FBI and the Department of Justice closing their investigations down? I'm Cody, your host for this week, joined by Arthur and Joe.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Welcome back to Propaganda Loves You. This is episode 3/4. I think it's still going to be episode 3. So we kind of had a weird thing. Obviously, we didn't have an episode come out last week, and I'm going to blame that on the weather because Whiteface got 12 inches of snow they weren't expecting to get. So I snowboarded a lot and I didn't do a lot of editing, which is okay because I think, we should just turn this podcast into a snowboarding podcast in the wintertime and then a golf podcast in the summertime. It'll be great because then I just spend all my time doing that.
Yeah, we'll have to skip the golf stuff. That's not really my speed, but I'd be down for the snowboarding stuff.
I still haven't figured out exactly what the right snowboarding playlist is yet, but I've been discovering that it's basically whatever I was listening to when I was snowboarding in 2005 and 2006. So it's all the high school hits from back in the day. So this week, what we're going to be talking about, we actually did a full 2-hour recording last week, and we hit on a couple different topics that you're going to hear most of those recordings today and throughout the week. We're going to have kind of a bit of a different release schedule that I'm not going to try to explain because it's probably going to change by the time these episodes come out, but you'll see it this week. It'll be a little bit different. We're hitting on some pretty heavy topics, obviously, with the Epstein Files release and what's occurring in the federal government related to that. So we're also going to be releasing some companion episodes, some bonus episodes this week that Joe was kind enough to give us related to kind of an introduction to meditation. Joe, I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit or give people an idea what they should be expecting from some of those episodes.
Sure. Yeah. Well, one of them would just be a kind of brief guided meditation that we did together here on the podcast last week, which is kind of just I think it was maybe 5 or 7 minutes or something like that. Just a simple, brief meditation that anybody could try if they have a few minutes to spare. If you have no experience with meditation and you just want to see like, what is it? What is it like? What do you do? Really easy kind of thing to try out on your own. Besides that, there are 4 longer, probably 20 to 25 minute recordings I've done. I'm part of a volunteer group that I think I've mentioned before in the podcast. We volunteer to teach meditation to incarcerated people in the DC area, as well as any community that typically doesn't have access to meditation content. And so as part of that group, the incarcerated people we serve have tablets that they have access to certain media on. Obviously, there's a lot of filtration and control over what they can access on those tablets, but we have the ability to produce meditation content for them and upload it onto their tablet so that they can work with it individually outside of our group sessions that we do. So as part of that effort, I recorded 4 so far, possibly more in the future, but I've already done 4 sort of getting started with meditation videos. And the way those are structured is it's kind of 3 parts in each video. It'll be a short guided meditation and then a short talk about the technique, and then another guided meditation that's a little bit different but adds on to those materials. And so I tried to build that with the beginner in mind. So those 4 episodes kind of get slightly deeper into the meditation as you go through them. And hopefully they're a nice, accessible, inviting on-ramp for people who aren't sure what to do about meditation, but are kind of curious about sticking their toe in the water, seeing how it feels, and seeing if that feels right for them to keep exploring on their own. So yeah, hopefully if you listen to those, you get something out of it. We'd love to hear back from you. Send us an email, respond on the Reddit, whatever the case is for you. Love to hear what your thoughts are about the meditation content and if that's something that I should do more of on the podcast. So enjoy.
Arthur, before we kick it over to you, I just have one last thing I wanted to say as kind of an intro. And I sent this to to everyone on the team earlier, but the most recent crazy thing that Trump had posted was an extremely racist video with the Obamas depicted as apes, and like the whole video is like a Lion King AI fever dream nightmare. The only reason I wanted to bring it up was because we talked about the creator of this video back in season 1. This is from the Dilly meme team, the same guy that did the video of Trump flying a plane over New York and dropping crap on top of everybody. So just thought it's worth mentioning, the same crazy person that says, the truth doesn't matter and all you need is to go viral. It's the guy that's making these things that Trump is still posting. So that should help with the video itself is insane, but just thought that was worth mentioning before we go in. Arthur, over to you for this new segment that is yet to be named, but we'll figure
yet to
something
be
out along the way.
Yeah, let's brainstorm some names. I thought, I was trying to come up with some, and I thought, it could be focused on Epstein, and I don't know, my brain really loves alliteration or pun, I guess. So I was trying to steer away from that because that's what I do. And I also, one of my favorite segment names is NPR's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. So I thought maybe something simple too. So I got a few options here, and it can be none of these options because you could stew on something greater. Okay, but I got Who's Getting Away with What? That kind of covers, it could be anything. It could be variety there. I got the Impunity Index. Okay, that's okay. It could be okay. Epstein Filing Cabinet. Is that just too stupid?
On the nose.
Or we Power Unchecked. That's an easy one. And that's about it, Anything stand out to y'all?
I liked the Epstein file of, what was it? Filing cabinet?
Filing cabinet, yeah.
I thought Cabinet of Curiosities is a thing, and
Well, I
then
like that.
Epstein filing Cabinet of Atrocities, something like
It's
that. I
the
don't know.
real name. Yeah, I like that.
Filing Cabinet of Atrocities. That's a good one.
Okay, well, hey, on this week's Epstein Filing Cabinet, I would have to get used to saying it, the entire tongue twister there. There's a lot going on, and even more posted today. This morning I was reading, and gonna kind of go through all of it. I think you're gonna ask yourself, what timeline is this? Is this real? And unfortunately, it is. So I guess this week, what I was seeing was the Department of Justice has released about 3.5 million Epstein-related documents, but the actual archive, they've said, is over 6 million. And members of Congress this week were also told that they can review unredacted materials in secure rooms, no copies, no guarantee that anything comes to the public. They're also told, with a judicial warrant, that they could show up to an ICE facility and go inside, but that is not happening. So I'm a little skeptical on this whole, oversight on ICE. So then we saw the DOJ this week also said that they drafted, I guess this came out in a big pile here, but one detail it raised eyebrows, I think, is that the DOJ drafted a statement about Epstein's suicide the day before he died.
That's totally normal, right? You guys don't do that?
Are you aware of this trend, with certain things that, a lot of people figured this out with Charlie Kirk when he was assassinated? You can do Google trend searches by a certain date. You can go back and see what was trending in Google searches on a certain date. The school he was at, the day he got shot, the hospital he went to, the doctors who saw him after he was taken to the hospital, all these people had Google trend spikes in the week before the assassination took place. And a lot of these spikes happened in a certain state in the Middle East that I'm afraid to name directly, given the topic that we're going to talk about today and all those conspiracy theories. That is also something that people pick up on. You can sort of watch a big event take place and then look into the Google trend searches around that event leading up to it. And then the conspiracy pattern recognition wheels just start going crazy in the mind. So that is something to think about.
And maybe there's a special Patreon bonus scene here where you get the conspiracy insides, maybe we can cut this if you don't want it on the air. But like, there's also, in reading all this Epstein news, because I really read it all this week, and there's a lot, and I went down to these rabbit holes of Reddit of conspiracy theories, and like, so there's a strong group who believes Epstein, didn't die and it's planned, and there's like an autopsy TikTok guy who says like the photos aren't the real body, and they go through an expertise video of why it's not a real body. And then there's like recent footage that comes out of this security prison where like a guy gets in a van and they got a photo who kind of, and there's like a guy who maybe worked there who's registered, and they find like it correlated. He did work there at the time, and he's saying these things, and it's like, it's scary. Like, I don't know. Anyway, that's the conspiracy stuff. The other news that occurred is that
hold on though. Like the
yeah.
conspiracy stuff is important, and the reason it's important is because like it's a defense. It's a like it really is like you can't convince me that whatever 3.5 million documents that they chose to release were chosen at random, or whatever ones that they've still got. Like, obviously there's a reason why they picked the documents that they picked, why they released the documents they released in the way that they did it, right? Maybe there's a mushroom metaphor here of like it being the perfect fertile grounds to just create whatever you want to just throw at the wall at this point, right? Like, because you could just straight up make up documents that look like they could have been dropped legitimately in the Epstein files and mirror a DOJ website that has one letter off in the address bar, right? And start spreading that stuff around, which happens constantly on places like Reddit, where you've got the Daily Wire with 2 eyes, right? Like saying a news article. So like, all of this is purposely done to make it so much more difficult to figure out like what is legit and what is not. So I just wanted to like it's an important point that you're bringing up, Arthur. Like, all this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's such a common tactic. Like, and part of what I felt like I learned this week listening to the Drop Site report was that like a lot of these big right-wing conspiracies that sort of gripped the politics in the last 10 or 15 years were purposely manufactured by this group of elites that Epstein was the center of, like these 4chan communities that start all these like they deliberately set these things up. And even Ghislaine Maxwell was like one of the top Reddit users for the longest time, like the highest, like I forget how Reddit works, but one of the top upvoted or whatever.
She was like a top moderator or something on a ton of communities, controlling what can be seen. And who's left on the moderator list? I don't know. But yeah, I think all of this points to like really great news things that came out this week, which like, a watchdog report showed that the DOJ failed to include communications from high profile figures, specifically Trump era officials, which I think we're all pointing at. And then survivors are continuing to echo like redaction errors, and that, yes, it is like muddying the waters. They're releasing like names of certain victims, photos of certain victims, and it's like they're not releasing this for the Trump era people. So it does seem to be totally intentional. And aside from that, I think the big thing that dropped was really that they drafted Epstein's suicide release, which, sometimes they do it for high risk profiles. I don't know. I can't really defend it. But that's really the Epstein update, and I think we're just going to see a ton come out. And this week, too, something interesting on Reddit is that in the latest file dump, a lot of passwords came out for his old emails, Epstein's old emails, and some people got into them. So I think we're going to see some things come out. My most interesting, like, quirky thing that I read is there was a redaction email that seemed pretty standard, and it redacted the word "don't" seemingly from the email. And people kind of concluded that the FBI used some sort of redaction software that would get rid of Dawn T. Because why would the word "don't" be redacted from the sentence? Just seemed kind of interesting. So maybe some foul play, and we'll continue to update you as it all comes up next week and the week after.
Yeah. That's so interesting too, because like one of the things that I sort of thought about a lot in grad school when I was working on literature, studying novels and stuff, but some of the novels dealt with bureaucracy. One novel in particular, David Foster Wallace's The Pale King, I was sort of looking at it through the lens of bureaucracy and how it depicted the control of information and how governments relate to the public and everything. And one of the most sinister strategies that are often used to hide atrocities is just to bury the truth in a ton of information. And you sort of depend on the fact that people aren't going to take the time to sift through everything, to read between the lines, to read all the reports, to figure out what's there. And so you're able to hide the truth in plain sight. And I think this Epstein stuff is such a great example of whether or not that strategy works for the elites, because there's a ton, like you said, 3 to 6 million, maybe even 9 million documents and emails. There are recordings there too that Dropsite pointed out. There was like a 3-hour recording Epstein did of a dinner with some, I forgot the two people, but one of them was an Israeli, it was Ehud Barak, a former prime minister of Israel, and then I can't remember who the second guy was, but all kinds of information in there, right? And yeah, it's just sort of a test for the public. Are they willing to sift through the noise and figure out what's true or not? Because Trump will say like, oh, these documents have been released and they all exonerate me. You can look for yourself. I didn't do anything wrong. And people are like, oh, okay, let me look into this. Oh, there's a lot of stuff in here that Trump did wrong. Wow, you're just straight up lying. It's all in here. And then they have to backtrack. They're like, oh, no. Redact. So it's really exciting, scary, interesting moment in the politics.
Yeah, that whole article, like, thanks for sharing that from Dropsite too, Joe, because that angle that they are digging into with the connections, like, I'm trying to think of a way to, there's no way to say this. We can separate the pedophile ring out for a second, right? I know that sounds terrible, but you almost need to when you're looking at like the implications of the government, high level government access and like the people that, you know, he was targeting. Like that seems like that was definitely a method of coercion and a method of control, but not the only thing that he was doing. Like, and something else that popped out in that reporting to me was when they were talking back and forth. I think they were arranging, I can't remember if it was Barack visit, but the person was asking like if they were traveling under their name and passport, which that like immediately was like, oh yeah, of course. Like if you're like talking about that's some standard spycraft shit, right? To have cover and, you know, have that be your a different name and passport that you're traveling under. And it's like, yeah, those government connections are just too, I don't know what the word is, obvious. Like it's strange, like that you can't have that conversation because of all the work that Netanyahu's done to, you know, make like even that association be considered anti-Semitic or whatever. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And maybe you'll touch on this a little bit when you get into your piece later on, but it's definitely a cynical strategy that the government of Israel uses to you know, sort of poo-poo any criticism they get or anything, just brush it off as an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. And people have pointed it out for years now that doing that very thing makes Jewish people around the world less safe, because the state of Israel is doing these atrocities and associating their identity so forcefully with Jewish people writ large that it makes Jewish people in general less safe. So we do need to be able to separate individual persons from institutions, and especially when we're talking about ethnic groups and everything. We can talk about what the government of Israel is doing in their atrocities without implicating Jewish people writ large, which is an important needle to thread when you're doing the whole conspiracy theory analysis. Like you have to be really clear about which institutions and people you're talking about and not just do the sort of broad sweeping inclusion of a whole group. But yeah, with the Dropsite stuff with Epstein, what I really appreciate about the reporting they've been doing is they're not ignoring all of the sex crimes and pedophilia and abuse and everything that's going on, but what they're pointing to is the fact that Epstein was the center of what was in the middle of a large neoliberal group of global elites that are connected across governments that transcend national boundaries. You have Israeli officials, UK officials, American officials, Arab state officials. You even have the Prime Minister of India involved in a lot of this stuff. And so he's really a nexus point to connect all of these government people and to broker deals that are favorable to him, especially Israeli tech corporations. There's a lot going into like surveillance tech, Palantir specifically, that he was involved with, brokering deals with. So when you get into their reporting, you start to see this really sinister web of connections take place. And that's what I appreciate, is that kind of perspective that they get.
Yeah.
I really liked that video, and at the end, when they called Epstein, hold on, I had to write it down, a preeminent neoliberal global figure. I love that. And is that weekly that they do that?
Yeah, they do a Tuesday live stream every week. I've only watched it a couple of times. It's usually on one topic, but this one was just like, oh, they hit 3 really big topics in a really clear, helpful way. So.
That was great. Yeah. And we rarely talk in the US, it's totally like pedophile ring. And I think like globally, it's like he's like an Israeli like world maker who did so much. In Europe, obviously, there's so many consequences going on. And in the US, it's totally getting like obfuscated from this muddied PR or like warfare. I don't know.
Oh yeah, the PR angle of like the day that they dropped, how many things did you guys see like on social media related to Elon Musk and never being or never being allowed to go to the ring, or like wasn't allowed to hang out with pedophiles? Like that is a PR angle to completely just distract from the fact that no, he was definitely there multiple times. like there is an email where he's basically is getting rejected by them, but at the same time, like he'd been there before that. So yeah, it's definitely PR working overtime on these things to completely change public perception. Yeah, what we're willing to accept. Which I'm just thinking about, like, how many members of Trump's cabinet are implicated in this, and it's like, yeah, it's just the whole thing. Like that's if I don't know, it feels like is it Occam's razor moment? Like the simplest answer is like usually when I was giving way too much credit to all these billionaires and being like, man, they see climate change coming, they're batting down the hatches, they've probably got some plan to really, fortify Greenland and live for the next 1,000 years. They're just trying not to get caught being pedophiles. Like it all like boils down. I know that's an oversimplification. It's probably both, but anyway.
I actually don't get like I don't know, like why PACs, and if they really wanted this value, like why wouldn't they try to do a PR push?
You mean do a PR push?
They could try to do a PR push to like legally lower the, age in some states and like fight for this if that's like their pedophile wish. Like, I don't know, it's a weird thing, but like they definitely could do it in their.
I think they are.
Like, are they? Is it like a slow thing? And I have seen videos of people say like, "Oh, why is it?" Yeah, so it's pretty weird. It's
a slow cultural shift that you're trying to make to where like Christian like nationalist views and those things are the mainstream, right? Which includes like shut up, stay at home, and you can like you don't need to go get an education. You need to serve your husband at I don't know what age. Like I'd probably be making something up, but I think it's like definitely lower than what it is now that pushing for. But
I'm almost finished with The Handmaid's Tale right now. If you haven't read The Handmaid's Tale, right on point with this whole conversation and very spooky, but just literary, write the hell out of a sentence. Really, really talented writer. But yeah, reading The Handmaid's Tale right now is kind of eerie, given all the actual fascism that's trying to get stood up. But that's part of it, the whole propaganda angle about politics of sexuality, of gender, of like women's roles, of men's roles, what's expected, all this stuff. And yeah, very infantilizing, control of information, it's all there. So sometimes novels can teach you a lot about politics, and that's one of my favorite things about a good novel.
Like you wouldn't have even dreamed of hearing this kind of stuff 2 weeks ago. And I think in 2 weeks, we're going to be thinking the same thing when we discuss those topics.
Well, actually, I think my brain kind of caught up with the conversation for a second to like more specifically, when you said there's like a PR push to try and get it to the point where this stuff is normalized, right? To where they can just have their,
Seems
keep
like
living.
That's what they want.
Right. And you think about where were we a year ago, like you just said it, right? Like a year, 2 years ago, culturally, if this had dropped, like what would the reaction be, right? Like at different points along this journey of 10 years that we've had with Trump and his quest for power, like at what points along that journey would this have killed him politically? Do you think it would have killed him in the beginning? or in the middle? Or do you think like he's just been so much has been released on him, like, and so many things that we've gotten number and number and number? Like, do you think the impact today is the same impact we would have had 10 years ago with this coming out? I guess is what I'm saying. So like, did it work is my question. Like this push to either normalize or obfuscate to the point where they're going to get away with it, right?
Yeah, definitely. And how can you not be so upset at like Joe Biden? Like, what is he doing? How could his presidency be anything but a failure? That is like, it is on him that like this is put out during Trump. All of this stuff is being put out during Trump. This is like, what the hell happened to the Democrats? And why is Trump a free person? It's unbelievable.
Because they believed in their institutions, or they were going to try and cover everything up anyway. One of the two. Like they either believed that it was going to work.
Yeah.
I don't think there's another answer.
Yeah, one of the, I guess, silver linings to all this is that the Democratic Party in general does come out looking like very big losers in this whole picture. Like the right wing is consolidating power in a big way, not backing down, and Democratic leaders just look feckless and weak across the board at the federal level, at least. And I think people who used to really put a lot of faith and hope into the electoral system are increasingly looking for other ways to make change. And that's why we're seeing a lot more organizing take place, a lot more solidarity, a lot of people just being fed up with being told to wait on another 4 years for your chance to vote. We'll make it. He's only going to be here for 4. He has no plans of going away, right? Either him or his direct proxy, they have no plans of going away. And if we think voting is going to save us, we're going to be very, very disappointed. But I think more people have woken up to that in light of all these revelations and power grabs and everything. Like you said, Joe Biden had all of the government for 4 years. He could have done some really big things, and they didn't. They just didn't. They sat on their hands, and then we're right back in it again. So what can we do as everyday people?
Please stay tuned for a word from our sponsors.
Citizens, as your Secretary of Digital Infrastructure and Treasury and the current CEO of Obey, I have overseen the final bridge between your personal ambition and our national interest. Your wealth is no longer an individual burden, but instead a synchronized asset within your new unified wallet.
At Faith First, we recognize that true stewardship requires total transparency. We are proud to announce that all legacy accounts will have been seamlessly transitioned into the new Freedom Points program database. Your tithes, your savings, and your state-issued subsidies now exist in a single account protected by the authority's unparalleled cybersecurity.
A big change can seem scary, and some people may be feeling nervous about the transition. Allow me to share my story, because my civic engagement has always been flawless. My Freedom Points premium balance has tripled. Years of loyalty have been rewarded with a handsome Patriots purse and a high-yield investment in the authority's stewardship.
Enrollment is no longer an action you take. We have fully integrated our entire national database into one single efficient digital stronghold. All citizens now have access to our entry-level Freedom Points program perks, including provisional access to secure public spaces.
Faith First will still be the home of all your Patriots Mortgage, Legacy Lifeline Trust, Last Chance Land Trust, and Collateral Certainty Bonds accounts. All Faith First accounts are restricted to enrollment by citizens who are actively deemed compliant with our standards of moral integrity and remain in good civic standing.
My credit is pristine because my loyalty is absolute. I've never been richer. What else can I say?
Obey. Your loyalty perfected.
All Freedom Points are subject to review by the Obey algorithm and may be rescinded due to a lack of social compliance.
You guys want to watch some really awesome videos?
Heck yeah.
Let's start with Khanna. You know, we got a good kind of introduction into what is occurring with the Epstein Files, and I think it'd be great to kind of watch Khanna's speech from last week, what he says on the House floor, and then understand, you know, from that perspective, what's going on here with the current state of the files.
When Congressman Massey and I pointed this out to the Department of Justice, They acknowledged their mistake. And now they have revealed the identity
Speaker,
of these six
Price-
powerful men. These men are Salvatore Navora, Zorab Mikoladze, Leopig Leonor, Nicola Caputa, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, CEO of Dubai Ports World, and billionaire businessman Leslie Wexner, who was labeled as a co-conspirator by the FBI. Now, my question is, why did it take Thomas Massie and me going to the Justice Department to get these six men's identities to become public? And if we found six men that they were hiding in 2 hours, imagine how many men they are covering up for in those 3 million files. But the story gets worse. The reality is that Donald Trump's FBI scrubbed these files in March, long before Thomas Massie and I passed the Epstein Transparency Act.
Thank you, Mr.
Now, my bill is clear. The Epstein Transparency Act requires them to unredact those FBI files. And yet the Justice Department said to me and to Congressman Massie, we just uploaded whatever the FBI sent us. And guess what? The FBI sent scrubbed files. That means the survivor's statement to the FBI, naming rich and powerful men who went to Epstein's island, who went to his ranch, who went to his home and raped and abused underage girls or saw underage girls being paraded, they're all hidden. They're all redacted. It's a little bit of a farce. They're inviting all the members of Congress to go to see the Department of Justice, quote unquote, unredacted files, but they've got all redacted files from the FBI. And it's not the fault of the Justice Department attorneys. They were just told upload things that Donald Trump's FBI had already scrubbed. It's a blatant violation of the Epstein Transparency Act, but it also asks a fundamental question. Who are they protecting? Why are they protecting these rich and powerful men, people I call part of the Epstein class? Why are we in a country where there is no elite accountability for people who do the most heinous things? You have in England the king now calling for an investigation and possible prosecution of his own brother. You have in Norway the princess who no longer has support to be the queen. And yet in the United States of America, we have someone in the cabinet, Howard Lutnick, who is all over these Epstein files, who allegedly had business with Epstein after he was convicted of pedophilia, and he still is in the cabinet. We need to ask ourselves, are we in America going to have elite accountability? Are we going to call on rich and powerful people who broke the law or cavorted with a pedophile, a convicted pedophile? Are we going to call them to account? Are we going to have prosecutions for billionaires who went to this island and either raped underage girls or saw underage girls being raped and didn't say anything? Are we going to have investigations? I'll tell you what this is about. It's not just about the 1,200 survivors. It's about 2 tiers of justice in America. It's about people who can accumulate wealth and power and don't have to care about the rest of America. They have destroyed so much of this country. Income inequality is at a 60-year high. Worker salaries are less than they have been for 75 years as a part of GDP. Somehow this country seems to be working for the rich and powerful, but it's not working for ordinary working class Americans. I say enough. It's time to begin with accountability for the Epstein class. Hold them in front of Congress, those people who visited the island or did business with Epstein after he was a convicted pedophile. Investigate them, prosecute them, and let's return to democratic accountability in the United States of America. Let's return to one system of justice in the United States of America. Let's return to a place where every American has a stake in this country.
I would notice that he did today or yesterday, something came out about he had to walk back. 4 out of those 6 names were that he released at the beginning had no ties to Epstein, the DOJ claims. 4 of them were randomly picked to be part of a lineup. And other 2, yes, one of them is like a co-conspirator. and the other one also has connections, but 4 of them don't, I guess. But I love the larger point of, like, yes, 2 tiers of justice, and like if they found these within 2 hours of trying to cover up, these documents, like these names, like, of course, who's out there.
Yeah, I think my only comment on that is like, of course, there's going to be so many mistakes because they didn't release this in any way that makes sense, and they didn't follow through with these investigations and actually do what they were supposed to, which is, prosecute the co-conspirators. So, like, yeah, I mean, I can completely understand where, the mistakes may come from, but I think he also released a statement that was like, we could have avoided a lot of this. I can't remember if it was Khanna or if it was Thomas Massey who said this, but like, if they just did what they were supposed to, in the beginning, then there wouldn't be confusion, right? Like this is on them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think we need more, to the extent that our Congress people can actually find their backbones and speak up and do stuff about this. The more people acting like that, the better. Yeah, I'm just thinking about my congressperson, Glenn Ivey, who's in a tricky situation as like a kind of elite person, because he sort of brands himself as like a vehemently anti-Trump Democrat in a lot of ways, but the only way he won this congressional seat was with, I think, about $20 million in support, either directly or through PAC advertisement from the Israeli lobby. And so he can't really speak to the full breadth of the collusion at the upper levels of government, of the complicity that Epstein's whole ring implies on a nation state level. And so I imagine there are a lot of politicians like that who are compromised in one way or another. I've seen people call out Lindsey Graham before. Like, wouldn't it be easier just to admit that you're gay than to just allow people to keep blackmailing you? Because that's kind of the idea a lot of people have about Lindsey Graham. And yeah, a lot of these politicians are compromised. So it's nice to see when they do find some courage to actually speak up, knowing that it might hurt their contributions, and maybe you'll have to depend on raising money from average people and not calling rich people on the Rolodex and figuring out who you can ask for money or whatever. I guess the only other thing I want to say about it is his comment about, and it's pedantic, it's quibbly, it's probably not that important, but he said, let's return to one system of justice. And I guess it's that idea of a return to some that sort of nostalgic looking back. Oh, wasn't it good? It never was. The country never has had one tier of justice from the beginning. It's been the purpose of the government and the judicial system in particular, is to solve upper class disputes peacefully and to keep the lower classes in check. And it'll be interesting to see if powerful people do get held accountable by this justice system or not.
I agree. And I like your point there too about the amount of people that are compromised, and so they can't speak out in one way or another. And I think it's like we still need to figure out a bell or a sound for this, but like going into the conspiracy zone, right, for a second, like this is like, I've always wondered why Marco Rubio looks like he's about to throw up every time he's on camera. And it's like, the simplest explanation is he's probably in one of those files, like, right? Like, just, I don't know if he is or not. Like, I'm just saying, like, enough people from Trump's cabinet are like coming out in the files. It's just like, did he just pick people that are completely compromised because he knows that they're going to go down just as hard as he is? Like, I keep thinking about that video of Trump shitting on the Epstein investigation, calling it a hoax, with Howard Lutnick standing next to him just laughing, right? Like, and it's like, is that everybody in the cabinet? Just like, that's why it's like, I think, Joe, you said a while ago, like the billionaires are going crazy from this, like, whatever you call it, like dragon disease. And I'm like, maybe it's that plus, right? Like, J.K. Rowling went nuts. She's in the files, it turns out. Like, same thing at Elon Musk going crazy. Like, I don't know, maybe they're all crazy, but yeah, I don't know. That sorry, a bit of a tangent there, but that made me think of that. Like, all these people that are compromised in some way, either because they were directly involved or they knew about it and they didn't do anything about it. Yeah, and yet you've got a handful of Republican congresspersons that we probably 5 years ago would have called pure MAGA, and Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And these are the people that actually voted to have this come out. right? So, I don't know, like, it's like they fully bought the Kool-Aid, somehow got elected to Congress, but didn't get compromised enough to be shut down on this vote, right? I just think that's, I don't know. If anything comes from that, in my mind, that's gonna be a bit of the poetic justice to to come from this, right? If those true MAGA Congress people are the ones that help bring it down, it'd be funny to me, but
Yeah, seeing Marjorie Taylor Greene's turn after all the Epstein stuff is really interesting to watch politically. Kind of like they created a monster, and then the monster was like starting to learn more and was like, wait, 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 and now the monster's turning on them, and it's kind of, I don't know, yeah, like you said, just interesting to watch, and definitely not Marjorie Taylor MTG stan, not me, but it is interesting to see her political shift. The other thing, you brought up Marco Rubio. I was just curious if you guys have been following Dropsite's comments about Marco Rubio and how he's kind of intentionally misleading Trump on Cuba. Like, Trump in public will say that he's in talks with the Cuban government. And someone from the State Department, I think, had leaked to Dropsite that there are no talks with Cuba. They are not talking. But Marco Rubio is trying to convince Trump that the talks are ongoing because Marco Rubio has a strong Miami Cuban constituency, meaning after the Cuban Revolution, the sort of bourgeois class of Cubans that fled to southern Florida are his main constituency. And so he's strongly trying to just disrupt that regime for his own political reasons. And I don't know if you guys have been following that or not, but it's just something that came to mind.
Marco Rubio was always the one that was kind of hard for me to square because he like in the cabinet, he seems to be the most traditional politician left, but I was always the one that was trying to, like, it was hard for me to understand like how you end up in that spot. But at the same time, if you feel like you can play the president just by telling him things and he's not going to go fact check it, right? Like it's like that weird power dynamics internal. So just a couple shorter videos that I wanted to watch really quick with you guys. So, we saw Ro Khanna on the floor, his speech, and now I want to show you some clips from the House Judiciary meeting, but basically Pam Bondi and her defending the Epstein file handling, I guess, from the Department of Justice, if you want to call it that. And so let me share my screen one more time. If you haven't seen any of the clips from this, it got a little heated at a few different points in this meeting.
Didn't have a right to know the answers to this. These are senior officials in the Trump administration. This is not a game, Secretary.
I'm Attorney General.
My apologies, I couldn't tell. By 2008, we knew that Epstein was a convicted sexual abuser. And we now know that Lutnick went to Epstein's Island in 2012. How was that not a deal breaker for the president? And why aren't you asking questions of the Commerce Secretary about what he saw when he was at the island, which he lied about not ever going to? Why are you not asking these questions? And I see that my time is almost expired, so I will say this. Do the right thing, Attorney General. Meet with the survivors. They have been asking for a year. Meet with the survivors. Do the right thing. I yield back.
Lady yields back. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
May I have 20 seconds of his time?
So that'd be up to the gentleman, but
absolutely, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you. I was curious if you, Congresswoman, asked Bill Clinton that. Didn't see one tweet, not one. I didn't see one tweet when Joe Biden was in office about Bill Clinton. Didn't ask Merrick Garland anything about Epstein, not once. When he was
weak sauce.
And also, I want the record to reflect that, with this anti-Semitic culture right now, she voted against a resolution condemning.
Oh,
you
want to be clear. I want to go there, Attorney General. Do you want to go there? The fact of the matter is that you will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history. An attorney general who has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, fealty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield.
Lady yields. Gentleman from Missouri is recognized. Gentleman who defends is the Attorney General, former Attorney General, Mr. Schmidt is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General Bondi, thanks for being here. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we talk?
I do. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, my friend, for many years. I find it interesting that she didn't even want to try Congresswoman Crockett to ask any questions because she certainly did not condemn her leader, Hakeem Jeffries, for taking money from Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein was convicted. And I will be brief to give you your time, Congressman. This is what she didn't want to talk about. Texas, from Cuba, convicted, homicide, arson, weapon offense.
Convicted. So what we talking about? Convict some of these perpetrators that rape these women.
I'm the gentleman from
Here. Merrick Garland sat in this chair twice.
Attorney General Bondi.
Can I finish my answer?
No, I'm going to reclaim my time because I asked you a
Attorney General,
specific question
Attorney General
that
can
I would
respond to the
like
question.
you to answer, which is, will you turn to the survivors? This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness get to answer in the way they want to answer. The Attorney General can
That's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't like the answer. So,
Mr. Chairman,
why?
I have asked.
Didn't she ask Merrick Garland this?
I am
Twice.
reclaiming my
He's not in
time,
my
and when
chair.
I
I will
reclaim my
consider your
time,
No, Chairman,
There's always reclaimed from time.
In the gutter for her theatrics.
There were a few more instances there, but before we talk about this, one more clip I wanted to show you guys. And this was from advertisement that Pam Bondi had out when she was running for Attorney General in, I think this was Florida. So just want to play this really quick.
And calls for help for human trafficking, where young women and children are enslaved and abused. I knew we needed all hands on deck. Businesses and hospitals to spot it, our great law enforcement to stop it, and tougher penalties to punish it. We're taking on Medicaid fraud, pill mills, gangs, and more. And I'll fight to put human trafficking monsters where they belong, behind bars.
Pam Bondi, our Attorney General.
Florida ranked.
So that was, parts of Pam Bondi defending what the current Department of Justice has done in relation to the Epstein Files, followed by an advertisement for her running for Attorney General back in 2014, saying that they would put child abusers and human traffickers behind bars. What I wanted to talk about with this, obviously there's a lot of directions that we could go here. I think the big thing for me is obviously not answering any question, completely deflecting, trying to bring up other scapegoats, or trying to, like with the Texas piece, and trying to show convicted felons, again, nothing to do with why they're there and why they're having the conversation, but trying to use that as a way to deflect there. I want to get your thoughts on both the response and then just the juxtaposition of the promises that I guess are made in campaign ads versus what actually occurs.
Pam Bondi is such a loser. Pam Bondi is like the person that would have known about these Epstein, Epstein's convicted in 2008. Pam Bondi is the Florida Attorney General. She is the person who would have heard about all of this stuff, and has witnesses, and she knows it. And I'm fairly certain that's why she's picked for the DOJ head, because it is, I think what you're saying, it's a cabal of people that are like inside the castle, that if they get taken, they're all going down. So it's like, yeah, you got to have them all together, because they will literally all fight tooth and nail. They have the exact same purpose. So it's pretty sad. And I can see why people are a little disheartened in the American system. I think it's like, I love, as much as anybody, these videos of people looking idiotic, and you get to make fun of, the other camp or whatever. We all laugh at it. But it's just like, it's so sad that, we have these politicians who are a little like political theatrics, and they say, oh, it's not for theater. But it's like, they literally sit there, they ask these questions, the other person can answer them however they want. And then the person banging the gavel is like the top investor in that political, contribution pack. It's kind of disgusting. Just, yes, throw them in jail. We have the facts.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going to go. It's just the theatrics and the rhetoric of national politics, and how, for just considering the average voter or the average person's point of view, viewing this stuff, it's so hard to parse sincere political rhetoric. I mean, even just thinking about the way Pam Bondi was talking in that ad, the type of vitriolic kind of anger that all the politicians muster when they're in these meetings. Maybe some of it's sincere, maybe some of it's not. It just feels fundamentally like an unhealthy way to have this conversation, to have this debate. And I think what scares me about the hearings, the congressional hearings, I remember during Trump's first term in like 2016, 2017, watching all of I forgot the FBI guy who was like at the center of the investigation.
Comey?
Yeah,
James
maybe it was the Comey hearings. Just sort of, I don't know, wanting something to happen, be like, oh, it's all coming out in the open now. They're gonna get him. Like he can't get away this time. Like there's just this hope that they build up in you that like, oh, now something's finally gonna happen. Because we see it in public, we think that accountability is happening or is on the precipice of happening. And then the theatrics are over with, and then the energy of the conversation kind of dies down, and no one really notices when nothing actually happens. And so in retrospect, it's like, oh, this theatrical event is what we get that is the accountability. That's the accountability that we get. And that's what we're supposed to accept as accountability, that their secrets have been exposed and we can all see them. Not that they have to go to jail, not that they have to lose their position of power or their wealth or their anything, just that they get embarrassed publicly. That's the accountability. And as average people, we were sitting here thinking, do we accept that as accountability, or is there some kind of pressure we want to apply on the system to actually hold them accountable? And so that's where I really get frustrated, is like, I know that this theatrical event is kind of cathartic to watch. It's fun to see somebody get roasted when they deserve it. But that's the accountability. That's all we're going to get unless we really apply pressure to force their hand to actually hold people accountable.
Yeah, I completely agree. It needs to be, I can't remember who said this or where I heard it, but basically using time as a solvent, right? Like this is, I think you used the metaphor before, Joe, but like, this is the release valve, the pressure release valve of like, oh, you see it, it's visual. It's like, but then if over time, if people stop talking about that, that's what they hope for, right? They hope that time just makes it go away. And that like, I think that also points to a reality of politics in general and the reality of movements in general. Like it's not, we all kind of think of, I think we've had parts of this conversation before, but I think I have a tendency, maybe others do too, to think about historical events as happening, right? When we talk about like civil rights movement, we think about it happening, but like time is weird. We don't necessarily think about it happening over a decade or 15 years or 20 years. We think about, oh, like that thing happened and we made progress, right? It's going to be this, like, there's no other way for this to go. I don't think like this has to be a multi-year pressure campaign, because as of right now, the people in charge are obviously not going to hold themselves accountable. Like there's no way. So yeah, it has to be a multi-year pressure campaign on our representatives to do the right thing or to vote them out of office, unfortunately. Like, I mean, that's like what we're kind of sitting with right now, but it's also something to organize around. It is something that people can organize around and have been organizing around with the Victim Defense Fund and everything that they're doing. Like there are ways you can support this so that it doesn't go away, I guess.
And I loved Jasmine Crockett's comment there. I think she knew, like, why would you ask Pam Bondi a question? Like, do you see how she's responding? So I loved the comment, and I think it really irked Pam Bondi too, because she circled back to it.
Well, that's the other thing that the reason I kind of let those play instead of just the back and forths was what I find super interesting too, and you guys kind of hit on this, is how the GOP members responded to Bondi and like, oh, would you like to take some time to reply back to this person? Like, I'll gladly give you my time, right? Like, and it's just, yeah, it's pretty disgusting to watch, but it's also, you have to watch it because you need to see those interactions. That's going to do it for part 1 for this week. We will drop part 2 tomorrow, where Joe is going to go through an update on what's going on in Minnesota, specifically around labor organizing and what a general strike might look like in Minnesota versus larger general strike in the U.S. So join us for that episode tomorrow, and then on Thursday we should have our first Disinfo deep dive of the season. We're going to be talking about the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, one of the OG conspiracy theory disinformation ops. So look for that on Thursday. And after Thursday's episode, we will be releasing Joe's meditation series. So you'll get a bunch of content from us over the next few days. Thanks for listening. Stay aware, stay safe, and remember that propaganda loves you.